guys, Adele here. It's Tuesday again, and this week we're talking about LGBTQIA plus representation in the media. So before we get started, I'd like to just say that there's going to be a brief discussion of genitals, so if you're sensitive about that kind of thing, feel free to leave. You don't have to listen. But aside from that, the book I'm going to be talking about is really personal to me, so I chose it. It's called Middlesex, and it's by Jeffrey Eugenides. It's a Greek name. I apologize. I probably butchered it. Anyway, so this is the book, and it's about an intersex individual, which is a little unusual, you know? It's kind of cool. This person's name is Calliope Stephanides. And like I said, they're intersex. Specifically, they have 5-alpha reductase deficiency, which, if you want to look that up, go ahead. It's not particularly like, wow, but, you know, it's a form of being intersex. Anyway, so Cal, short for Calliope, is raised female, and he doesn't really have any reason to question his gender identity for the first half of his life. And even when he hits puberty and starts exhibiting like secondary male sex characteristics like extra hair and an enlargement of the down belows, he still doesn't question his identity. He just kind of knows that he's different from other girls. So, but then there's an incident where he has to go to the hospital, and he and, you know, the medical system and his parents find out that he's not genetically female. What ends up happening is that his parents send him to a therapist who's supposed to specialize in this kind of thing. And that therapist decides for him that his gender identity is female. And Cal would go along with it, except he reads his file and figures out what he is, because nobody really told him or explained it to him. And that really freaks him out, naturally, and he runs away because they're gonna give him genital corrective surgery, which is terrifying, really. So once he runs away, he kind of has some other self-discovery things that go on, which lead him to conclude that he identifies as male. There's a lot more going on in this book besides just Cal's story. 5-alpha reductase deficiency is very genetic and is often caused by inbreeding. And so it kind of goes back in history to talk about his grandparents' story and his parents' story. And it's really interesting because in that family history, it talks a lot about like immigration issues in America, because they're Greek and they immigrate to America. So, you know, lots of discussion about that. And it also, you know, brings up other historical events that I didn't really know were a thing. So if you like history, that's also still a really good book. It also discusses some really sensitive topics, and I think it treats them very well. One of those is how people who aren't cis or straight are kind of exploited in the sex industry. Cal is underage, and yet when he runs away, he kind of gets, I wouldn't say forced, but basically his only option for work is displaying his naked body to people in a club, because it's seen as like a fascination, because he's not, you know, he doesn't have male genitals or female genitals. He has intersex genitals. And the other sensitive topic that I think this book really treats well is genitals. A lot of people don't like to talk about it, even in our community. And it is still very rude to ask someone who's trans what their genitals are. Like, that's a huge no-no. But at the same time, there's a huge lack of discussion, especially, like, with female genitals. Even in countries like mine where we have sex ed that's mandatory in schools, you still don't really get very good talk about, like, nobody... I've heard of so many people who have female genitals who didn't even know what parts were which, and I was one of those people. So not talking about them is kind of, it's really harmful, and this book does talk about them, but instead of, like, focusing on them and being really creepy and just like, whoa, you know, it just talks about it as part of Cal's experience, which I think is a really great way to treat it. There has been a little bit of criticism on this book from the LGBTQIA plus community, mostly from lesbians, because Cal does have a relationship with a girl when he's a teenager, and before he decide, well, he doesn't decide, but before he figures out that he's male. And so some people see that, like, the author's choice to make him a male is kind of like lesbian phobic, like trying to make someone who's heterosexual. But I really think that Cal's, the way that he figures out that he's male is a lot more complex than that. So I think that that's a good thing to talk about. Like, what if there is some still phobia in this book, but I don't think it's actually there. So this book was really, it was very important for me to figure out my gender identity. Gender fluid is definitely not the same as intersex, but I think that anyone who's non-binary kind of experiences that feeling of not really fitting in to either of the sexes or genders that you're kind of presented with as options. And so it really, in describing Cal's experience, especially in high school, I think that I really identified with that and that feeling of not belonging, especially in the locker rooms. I guess basically the message I have to end with is that representation is important. You know, we hear that a lot, but what does it really mean? It means that, like, even though this book isn't about someone who's gender fluid, who doesn't have the same experiences or history as me, even though they're not me, because they're not cis or straight or even technically white, you know, it gives a lot of opportunity for other people who aren't cis, straight, or white to find themselves in literature, which cis, white, straight people have been doing forever. And I think that minorities, they need that chance too. Anyway, that's about it, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.